It is our great privilege today to be able to bring somebody that is a true American hero to you here. Colonel Walter Cunningham is a retired Marine Corps Air Force pilot who fought in the Korean War. He was NASA's second civilian astronaut on the Apollo 7 space program, having launched into space. He is a space pioneer. He is little known about him is that he is somebody who has also studied in the hard sciences. He is a physicist who has served on a number of advisory boards, including the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the National Space Biomedical Research Institute. In 1970, he founded the Earth Awareness Foundation, which focused on environmental concerns. He's the author of the book, The All-American Boys, and we are very proud to have him with you here today. Walt?
Thank you, Craig. That was the nick of time we got ready over here. For me, it's always a pleasure to be back with students, although I can look and tell that a lot of you are too old to be students here. Let me ask you this. How many of you out there, can I see the hands of those who are either involved in the science profession or are studying to be science? Can I see your hands, please? Well, there's more than one. Okay. Very good. And we've just listened to some of the public thinking about global warming and had a technical presentation on it. You can kind of put me in between, if you will, because I'm not a climate scientist. You know, I was a student like many of you out there for 8 years of my life studying physics. So I can remember back when climate science, it used to be considered a very respected field of science. But about 20 years ago, it began to deteriorate. And while I am not a climate scientist, I do consider myself an informed critic. I've been involved in the trying to understand what's been going on in climate science for the last 15 years. And most importantly, I believe in climate and scientific principles, if you will. Now, our home planet may appear kind of fragile from space, but it is really plain how well humans have adapted to the continuous climate change over the last million years. And we will continue to adjust to that in the future. Now, I'm not here to argue the scientific case against human-caused global warming, or anthropogenic warming, or AGW, or climate change, or climate disruption, or whatever is the current phrase that they're being used by the alarmists to claim of human-caused global warming. Now, these are all code words for governmental control of energy consumption and, consequently, our standard of living. Global warming alarmists, they focus, global warming alarmists focus on the small temperature increase since the Industrial Revolution, and they hypothesize that we humans are controlling the temperature of our planet. Well, they've sold the media and the public on something that they invented called consensus science. And the media has bought into human-caused global warming. Those of us who are skeptical of the alarmist claims are characterized as climate deniers or fake experts or against climate change. When everyone I know believes in climate change, climate has been changing. So instead of the alarmists presenting data to prove their hypothesis, they challenge skeptics like me to disprove their hypothesis. Well, while scientists are best qualified to deal with the scientific and academic aspects of this question, we all of us here have to deal with the financial consequences of any actions taken based on bad science. And today's war on global warming is a fight to avoid the economic destruction of our society and the lowering of our standard of living. Well, I'm going to start here to loosen things up with the only evidence I have found that might support the alarmist cause, the alarmist case of the temperature warming. So some of you will appreciate that. And the temperature of our planet has been changing for the last 4.8 billion years. Well, let's see if we can get off of that. And you've just heard from a professor, I believe, telling you some of these things. But the last time the temperature and the carbon dioxide levels were simultaneously both this low was about 300 million years ago. And about 500 million years ago, if you look on that chart, you can see that the carbon dioxide level was about 15 times higher than it is today. And if you just go back and look at the last 2,000 years of the climate, there were many, many times when the temperature was higher than it is today. The red line you see over there at the right, that's the phony hockey stick forecast that was made some years back. The public really doesn't know what to believe about human-caused global warming. The alarmists have been hammering at us now for almost 30 years, and most of the media are true believers. Politicians, in the absence of knowledge and understanding about climate science, have put themselves out on a limb, and that's a limb from which they find it very difficult to retreat. Empirical data collected over centuries established what we would call a provisional theory of climate change. Scientists have long known that the sun, the oceans, and variations in the Earth's orbit are the principal drivers of climate change. And while we may not fully understand all of the mechanisms or interactions involved, after hundreds of years it became the accepted theory of climate change. Well, scientists have also always questioned accepted theories, even those that evolved over centuries. So it's not surprising that some people were challenging that. But for a new hypothesis, to modify or replace an accepted theory, it must be supported by the appropriate data. And back in the 1980s, a small group of individuals became concerned about the Earth's temperature and what it might do in the future. I hesitate to call those folks scientists because they've abandoned the scientific principles by which their guess about future temperature increases and its cause could achieve scientific acceptance or rejection. They hypothesized that warmer temperatures were a threat, that carbon dioxide levels were abnormally high, and that higher levels of carbon dioxide were bad for humanity, that warmer temperatures will be worse for the world, and that humans were capable of overriding natural forces to control the Earth's temperature. Only a couple of years sooner, just earlier than that, some of those same scientists were arguing that the imminent threat was global cooling, and it would eventually trigger an ice age. And I will say they were closer to reality with that particular thought. Their new hypothesis that human-caused carbon dioxide was responsible for global temperature increases, that was a challenge to the accepted theory of climate change. And for a new hypothesis to be accepted by the scientific community, it must be confirmed by considerable evidence, and it also must survive all attempts to disprove it. Well, the hypothesis that human-generated carbon dioxide is a principal driver of the Earth's temperature has not satisfied either of these criteria. However, too many people today are unable to distinguish between science and non-science. The alarmist hypothesis gained immediate traction with the media and eventually with many politicians. In the absence of supporting data, alarmists are appealing to the public, where politics, media, and money play important roles. Well, this is a controversy that should not be resolved in the court of public opinion or in the political arena. It should be resolved in the court of scientific inquiry and based on empirical data. Alarmists like to refer to the correlation between temperature and carbon dioxide levels. Well, here's some empirical data going back 130 years. Now, if you look at those two charts, is there a closer correlation between temperature and carbon dioxide or between temperature and solar activity? Besides, you need to know, correlation is not causation. If it was, look at this chart. It's a chart about the number of pirates. It shows the number of pirates decreasing over time while the temperature was increasing. Why aren't the alarmists today telling us that we can reduce the Earth's temperature by increasing the pirate industry? And if you want to take a look at the, if you want to look at causation, temperatures have changed over many years and carbon dioxide levels, but the temperature changes have preceded the carbon dioxide levels by those changes by 500 to 800 years. And that observation was much more consistent with the existing physical laws and the existing theory of climate change. The one things that alarmists are able to cite, and will cite to you in support of their simplistic hypotheses, are those mathematical models which they developed to prove that human-caused carbon dioxide is a dominant factor in controlling the Earth's temperature. Well, unfortunately, their climate models have never successfully predicted anything. Models are based on assumptions, which are opinions. And if the bases for the assumptions are wrong, then the results can never accurately predict future behavior. We should all emphasize that models are not data. You need to tell people who believe in that. Models are not data. We realists, we focus on empirical data and the scientific process, neither of which support the hypothesis that alarmists have dreamed up. So what do? They resort to alarmism, consensus science, politics, and money. They've convinced most of the media that humans are causing global warming, and they're convincing them that that's an accepted scientific theory, when it is not. In another ploy to scare the world into throwing away hundreds of billions of dollars in a fruitless effort to control the temperature, they appeal to the public's fear with, what if carbon dioxide is responsible for the temperature and we do nothing about it? That's another fear they're eliciting. Well, after years of searching, and I've been doing that for about 15 years, I have not found one piece of empirical evidence that man-made carbon dioxide has a significant impact on global climate. And that's very understandable when you consider that man-made carbon dioxide represents only 0.001% of the atmosphere. Well, with history, facts, and scientific theory all on the side of us, I call us realists, climate science realists, why is climate change such a controversial issue today? Well, I believe that the global warming war is being fought on 4 fronts. On the scientific front, the media front, the public perception front, and on the political front. We climate science realists, we've been fighting on the scientific front. And we appear to be winning the scientific battle, the scientific questions about it. But today we need to focus our attention on public understanding of the issues. The real battle today, and where skeptics appear to be losing, is on the media front. The media plays the most influential role in the public's perception, and to some degree with the politicians as well. I probably don't have to tell you that he who controls the vocabulary controls the argument. The alarmists have seized this semantic high ground a tactic that has helped move the subject away from the scientific arena into the political and economic arenas. The media, the public, and most of the politicians, with some rare exceptions, they show very little interest in gaining this scientific awareness. That does not prevent the media from playing a major role in this fight. Journalists are in a position to influence a great many readers, and many of them are aggressively pushing human-caused global warming. The alarmists, they refuse to accept that today's weather is within the realm of natural climate variability, and they are loath to admit how little control man has over nature. That's why global warming is sometimes referred to as a religion with the alarmists, a religion with the alarmists. To take global warming on faith, you have to reject the observable scientific reality and what we've learned about climate change over the past several centuries, and embrace the unproven hypothesis that humans are being responsible for global temperature changes. True believers in human-caused global warming cannot be reasoned out of their position, because it wasn't reason that got them there in the first place. It was emotion and politics. The challenge that we find ourselves faced with at this stage in this war is to engage the alarmists on the media front and to bring the media and the public back to reality. The media should not be just buying what others are telling them. And I'm going to urge the same thing to you. Do not buy what you're being told about that. And that includes, don't just buy what I'm telling you either. You need to look at the data yourself. A nuclear physicist by the name of Leo Szilard, which you may know of, he once said that if one knows only what one is told, one does not know enough to be able to arrive at a well-balanced decision. Well, I say, first and foremost, the media should look at the data themselves, and you should as well. We should make it clear that the argument is not about climate change. The argument is about the cause of climate change. When writing and speaking, realists should consistently refer to the alarmist claim as human-caused global warming, and not as anthropogenic warming, AGW, climate change, or climate disruption. They try to use that to get your mind on something else. And it should be made plain that alarmists are pushing a hypothesis. That's a guess based on their observations. It has never met the criteria for a theory. At this stage in the war on human-caused global warming, the battle for public perception may be a whole lot more critical than the scientific fight. And this battle, should not be beneath the dignity of climate science realists, especially when we are dealing with the media. So realists need to be using these kind of correct terms. We should all look at the empirical data before forming our own opinion. Don't just buy the opinions of others. And that includes me, as I said. Empirical data is not just another opinion. And if you can read a historical graph or a chart, you have most of the tools to examine the empirical data and form your own opinion on this climate issue. Well, I have looked and studied the empirical data now for a number of years, and I've concluded that evidence does not support the alarmist hypothesis. And I would also tell you that the UN IPCC is not a good place to look for objective data. Having followed my own advice, I will close by sharing with some of my own conclusions. My conclusions are, number one, based on historical data, there's no reason to be concerned about today's temperature or temperature trend. Two, human-produced carbon dioxide plays a minor, very minuscule role in global temperature when compared to the natural factors. And one of those natural factors is the carbon dioxide that's just been produced by nature. Three, higher temperatures And higher carbon dioxide levels will save more lives than lower levels will. And 4, finally, it's a fantasy to think that humans can have a significant influence on global temperatures. Now it's up to you to come up with your own answers. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dziękuję.